This is an interview with Benedict Herrman, longtime Subud member, writer, actor, and currently international helper in Subud. So Benedict, can you start by just telling us how you found and came into Subud?
Sure, Rahman. I knew about Subud actually 7 years before I was opened. My uncle, Haris Clemis, who recently passed away, was a longtime Subud member. He was opened, I think, in Palo Alto uh, back in the 60s. And I watched him, he would come to visit, and I watched him change. And I felt his changes were beneficial for him. I didn't know why. I just felt him getting happier and wider and lighter in his feelings. And there was something about him that felt good, that felt right. And then a few years later, of course, I was only 15 or 16 at the time. And then a number of years later, I was um, living in New York City. My marriage had fallen apart. I never should have done it, but we all do stupid things. And I called him up, and I was really hurting inside. And I called him up, and I just poured my heart out to him. And for the next 2 days, I felt empty and clean and lighter and happier. And I said to myself, that guy's got something I want. I don't know what it is, but I got to go find out. So I'm cutting this short story very short, but I left New York, eventually came out to California and hooked up with him, and he just started talking about Subud. And the more he talked, I said, that's it. That's what I've been looking for. And I knew there was just something in me that knew that this was what I wanted. Um, I had always felt, even as a young child, uh, that I would make a commitment to God in some way. I didn't know what that meant. I thought it meant maybe being a minister or something like that. But religion never did it for me. It was always some guy up there telling me I had to do stuff his way, and by the way, give him money. And that wasn't it for me. I needed the truth with a capital T. And it had to be direct. I didn't want any interlocutor. I didn't want an interpreter. I wanted a direct experience. And the more he talked about Subud, the more it just felt right. And eventually, uh, Haris, I moved down to take a job in Southern California, and he came down and opened me in April 17th, 1973.
And how was that opening for you?
Oh, it was very powerful in a way that's hard to explain. The actual experience itself wasn't overwhelming, but for the next 2 weeks, I had this feeling of complete calm and complete peace. And what I was told later by the helpers was, oh, yeah, you get a proof sometimes. As an actor, I was always worried about what other people thought of me. I was always um, tuned in to other people's opinions about who I was, about how I appeared, about all that kind of nonsense that a lot of actors go through. And for the next 2 weeks, none of that stuff mattered. I was just centered and quiet, and all the stuff that people would come to me and sort of throw at me with their energy, just knocked it aside. Didn't matter. And I was given to understand this, like, okay, here's what you can be like. Now you have to get there.
And what year was this?
1973. April 17th, 1973.
You remember that date, huh?
Oh, that's my birthday. That's my birthday.
Yeah, I remember mine too.
Yep, yep.
July 12th, 1963.
Nice, nice.
Um, have you been around Bapak very much? Have you had any experiences with him?
Not really. I mean, I've heard him talk a few times in person, and I met him in Carmel Valley, shook his hand, but not really what you would call, BAPAC experiences where people, have these occurrences. My Subud experiences have actually come about, um, for the most part, outside of the Latihan, unsought, um, quite spontaneously. And by Subud experiences, I mean things that I would call, I don't want to call supernatural because that has a strange connotation to it. But I would say outside of normal experience, things that came from the inside were clearly from, not from the mind or the heart, but something else, something real, something utterly without normal explanation.
Can you describe any of them or?
Oh, I can describe them all. I remember them all quite clearly. um, one of the very first ones I had, um, was I was talking with a girlfriend, and we were having very, very intense conversation. And suddenly, out of nowhere, this face appeared to me, white face. And by white, I mean just almost as if it was painted.
Hmm.
And it was scary. It was frightening, like monstrous. And no matter where I looked, it followed me, whether my eyes were open or whether my eyes were shut. And so something in me finally let go and looked right at it. And the moment I looked right at it, the face became humorous and softened. And it sort of looked like a cartoon character, Popeye or something, and it vanished. And I was given to understand that this face represents my fears. And when I face my fears right head on, they vanish.
Very nice. Yeah.
That's one of them. That's one of them. One of the most powerful ones, really, really life changing. I mean, if this were the only experience I'd ever had in 50 years, it would still be worth the price of admission, which was zero. Uh,
Yeah.
I and I should back this up with a little history. Both my parents were alcoholics. They both died of alcohol related, um, causes. And I had spontaneously quit drinking alcohol actually 3 months before I got opened. I don't know why. I just sort of said, I don't want that anymore. And I quit.
Hmm.
Um, and then a number of years later, I did some testing about something. And I don't think it's relevant, but I tested. And then afterwards, I had this feeling like, oh, it's okay for me to drink now. I don't know where that came from. I have no idea. But I started having a glass of wine with dinner every once in a while. And over the years, it grew subtly and grew and grew, and until I was drinking heavily again. And I was sitting on the sofa in the living room, and out of nowhere, it's like my chest opened up, and this feeling of complete unconditional love enveloped me. And a voice said to me, before you could drink and do your latihan, now you must choose. Those were the words. And in that instant, I said, well, nothing is going to keep me from my latihan. That went away. I haven't had a drink since then. It was like I also was given to understand this, that no matter what I chose, I was still loved. It was all right for me to choose either one. but I had to choose. I had to choose right then. And I chose my latte hunt. And that was January 2nd, 1990. And I have not had a drink or wanted a drink of alcohol since that time. And it's now 2023. And it wasn't just me, but it's like I didn't pass alcoholism onto any of my children. And that to me is a powerful gift, because there is a genetic component to alcoholism. And so
Story.
it's so powerful, Rockland. I can't tell you. But what was so amazing is the complete and unconditional love that just permeated everything. It was everywhere. It was within me. It's like I was floating in this sea of unconditional love and acceptance. Very, very powerful. And then as soon as I made up my mind, went away.
Yeah.
There's more.
I've
There's
had,
more.
I haven't been a drinker, but I've had similar experiences. That feeling of love,
That's right. That's right.
pretty amazing.
It is. It's like, what is there to worry about? Nothing. We are all loved. We are all watched. We are all cared for. There is guidance there for every human being if we are only willing to listen to it.
Yeah.
So here's another one, and then I'll stop. Many years ago, I was working for a company, phone company, selling Yellow Pages advertising. And I was divorced at the time, and I was living in Portland, and I was down in Marin County working. And instead of driving all the way back for the weekend, I said, well, I'll go down to Santa Cruz and I'll visit my uncle, Harvey's Clemens, and do Latte Hunt down there, which I did. And I did Latte Hunt there and received that I am not permitted to limit the vision of my future to Portland. I don't know why that came about. I wasn't looking for anything, but I remember those words. And I went, oh, okay, what else? Nothing else. Years go by. The recession hits. I lose my job, as many people did. I decided not to try to find another job, but I had money in the bank and I had a pension and unemployment and all that. And I just said, I'm going to detoxify from this job. And I just did voiceovers, acting gigs, did a couple of independent films, some theater, really just was a lot more nurturing than a corporate life. But I kept feeling like, well, I should do something, get a job someplace doing something. So I got quiet and I said, please show me what kind of work I should be doing. And I suddenly had this, and it's, when I say suddenly, I mean, it's like in a tenth of a second. It happened very, very quickly. I saw myself talking to a person or a group of people, and I was driving around a territory or a state or some kind of area, and I was driving a used green Subaru station wagon. And okay, what am I talking about? Who am I talking to? Where am I? Nothing else came. That was it. That was the receiving. So I said, okay, and I tucked it away in the back of my mind. A couple of more years go by, and I start to run out of money. And I've got about 5 or 6 house payments left, and then I'm going to be in trouble. And I got quiet again. I said, okay. I realized I had nowhere to go. And I said, okay, I'm officially asking for a miracle. I will do whatever you send me. Whatever you send me, I will accept. 2 weeks later, a friend of mine calls me up and he says, I work for this great company. They're great people. They're looking for somebody to sell. I recommended you. The only thing is you would have to move to Sacramento. And all of a sudden, all of these things lined up. I didn't limit the vision of my future to Portland. And I found myself driving around a territory, talking to either one person or groups of people, driving a used Subaru station wagon, except it was blue, not green. That was the only difference. Making more money than I'd ever made in my life. So, what do you do with that? I was cared for years before the need, given clues years before the need. It's always there. It's always there. And the love and the care is always there. It's like the angels are just with you, but you have to ask.
Yeah. So can I ask how you and Amina got together?
Oh, yeah, sure. I've known Amina for 40 plus years, almost 50. My then wife, the woman who was the mother of my children, was friends with Amina. They were opened in the same center, and we went to visit them at some point. She and I, and Amina and her then husband lived in McKinleyville, up in Northern California. And we went and we stayed with them for a while, and we visited, and eventually we went away. So I knew her, and we were friends, and that's all. I wasn't anything, there weren't any sparks or anything. I was married to different people. But many years later, her husband passed away. She had remarried actually, and he had gotten lung cancer at some point, and I was divorced. And she kind of put out a little help through Facebook, and I sent her some money, and I just, I said, hey, I hope this helps, and didn't think anything more about it. And she wrote back and said thank you. And then a few more years later, when I was in Sacramento, um, I wrote a thing on Facebook talking about how much I love my kids. And I do. I am absolutely head over heels enamored of my children, always have been. I'm a dad, and I've been the greatest gift of my mortal existence. Um, they really changed me. They're beautiful, beautiful people. But anyway, I wrote something about that, and she liked it, and she messaged me on Messenger and just said, "Hey, I really liked what you wrote." And I said, "Thank you. Didn't know how are you? Blah blah blah. And she kept writing, and she kept writing back. I said, "Well, this is a little bit more than friendship. A little bit more than friendship." But I didn't think anything a whole lot about it at the time. I had a girlfriend and wasn't looking for another relationship. But that girlfriend, as she was a lovely person and is a lovely person, but it was like a little voice inside of me saying, "This isn't the one. This isn't it." And I kept going, "Oh, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that." That voice kept being there. This isn't it. Then we had a helpers gathering in Sacramento, and Amina shows up, and she pulls me aside during one of the breaks we had. And she said, "I can't believe I'm doing this, but because I never do stuff like this, but I'm almost being forced to come to you and say that I have feelings for you." And something in me went, and I knew what I had to do, because I felt something too at that when she said that. I ended it with the other person, started seeing Amina, and we both agreed that we were both getting older, and we better not take a long time dating. And we got married at the end of that year.
Neat story.
We're just about to have our 10th anniversary on the 21st of December.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. And this is the 11th, so it's 10 days away.
Okay. So, have you had any experiences as an international helper that stand out that you'd like to share?
Oh gosh, there are so many, and not all of them, mystical in any way. So one of the things that really stands out to me is that the problems that plague us, first of all, are not unique at all to Subud. They're the problems that plague humanity: ego, wanting to be right, wanting to win, um, the tension between the haves and the have-nots, between class and higher class and lower class, caste systems, money, power, ego. These are things that are universal, it seems, on this planet. They're simply dressed up in various cultural costumes, but the nafsu, the tough stuff is all the same. And when people are willing to deal with it and look at themselves, not blame the other person, but look at themselves, then they can make progress. Rahayu calls this mawas diri. It's literally translated as self-reflection. If you're willing to look at yourself and say, what part am I playing in this drama? Because I can't control the other person. You can't control another person's actions. You can't control their reactions. You can't control how they feel. All you can control is the action that you take and how you feel about something. And when people are willing to look at that, changes can be made. And if they're not, nothing happens.
Yeah.
So it's not that, what I've found is that helpers don't make things happen. They create a space for things to happen. And what people bring to that space is the stuff that can be worked with. But if you're not willing to bring the stuff to the space, there's nothing I can do. I mean, I've got no magic. I'm just an ordinary guy, you know.
Yeah.
I did have one really interesting experience. I was walking down the streets of Havana, Cuba, of all places, and I don't know what brought it about, but all of a sudden, and I don't know how to put this because language is really inadequate, but I didn't exist.
Hmm.
It's like I was completely free, completely happy. And it was like, yes, you're in the right place at the right time, but I had no agenda, no ego, no nothing. I was just walking down the streets of Havana, and I felt this just I didn't have. This is why language doesn't work. To say that I didn't exist obviously is false, but it's like I didn't exist. It's like I wasn't there, or I was completely there. It was quite beautiful, and it only lasted a little while, but it was like this inner feeling of just complete harmony with where I was, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Um, I've had others. The first, I tell you, the first latihan I did with my day one. Day one is the nine men. There's 18 international helpers, 9 men, 9 women. The first time the 9 men got together in Chalandak back in, I want to say 2019, we had a hotel room that was kind of a suite, and we moved a bunch of stuff out of the way to do latihan. And we all sat in chairs, got quiet, stood up, and began. And we all spontaneously sang this low, sweet, harmonic note. And it and we all kept singing that note with only minor variations for 15 minutes. It was simply otherworldly. It was absolutely beautiful and absolutely calm and absolutely quiet. And it's almost like nobody moved. It was just this complete sense of harmony with each other that just floated almost like this. After 15 minutes of that, we all sat down spontaneously, and none of us could move or speak for the next 15 minutes. And that was our latihan. And afterwards, we sort of opened our eyes and looked around at each other, said, what just happened? And my feeling was, this is the job of the International Day One, to create that harmony amongst ourselves and to take that wherever we go, to take that state of being and love and connectedness wherever we go. It's not answering questions. It's not, testing, although there's lots of that. It's not, answering letters and talking, with the various committees and blah, 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 and which there's a lot of. It's that state. If all of the Subud groups in the world held that state, I don't think we would have any disagreements whatsoever. It was absolutely beautiful with a capital B.
Pretty amazing.
I've never had anything like that before. But that feeling exists when I get together with those guys. That's there.
Well, I don't have any more questions, but if you have anything else you'd like to say.
I don't know. I guess what I can just say is, Subud has saved my life. And knowing myself and all the religions that I went to a bunch of churches as a young man, and none of them gave me the right answer. None of them gave me the feeling that this was what I was looking for. Because it was always somebody else telling me something. And it was usually I have to do stuff their way. And the other guys were wrong. And it didn't have the content that I was looking for. And the content is what is already inside of us. The Subud is the contact. We talk about when we get open, what we're really doing is receiving the contact with the great life force. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel that all the time now. Bapa said a long time ago, he said, the lives of Subud members will become automatic. And I know what he means by that, because it's always there. The latihan is always there. I don't have to go looking for it. I feel it all the time. It's always there. It's a contact that I feel in my body. I feel it with everything. And once I had an experience where for a few seconds, this was quite a number of years ago, for a few seconds, it was taken away from me. I was petrified. I felt like a bell jar had been put over me and I didn't feel contact with anything. I felt completely isolated and cut off. And I just remember saying, give it back, give it back, give it back, give it back. And then the jar was lifted. It's like, oh, that's how most people live their lives. Cut off from everything. Very powerful.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say, man. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah. Uh, I can end now, or if you have anything else you'd like to say. So,
Just ask questions if you want, or don't if you don't have any more. I'm good.
okay. I'm going to end the interview, and thank you for doing it. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. Hope to see you at Manuka next year.
Uh, it's not going to be at Manuka next year.
I know, but you know,
Yeah.
whatever gathering we have,
Yes.
that'll be it. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope to see you too.
Okay. Take
Bye.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.